concerning December's administrative session. Thank you. This is a regular meeting of the Baltimore City Ethics Board of January 12th, 2021. We are conducting this meeting on a virtual platform, and we need to let you know that per the Open Meetings Act, the board discloses that it adjourned its virtual open meeting of December 9th, 2020 to enter into an administrative session at approximately 3:17 p.m. All board members were present at that meeting. The members discussed complaints and a request from a city employee for guidance on potential outside employment. Now, before we go further, you need to understand that the board may need to close some or all of this meeting to preserve the confidentiality mandated by the Ethics Code or as otherwise authorized by the State Open Meetings Act. Likewise, upon adjournment of the open session, the board may reconvene for an administrative session to discuss non-public administrative functions of the board. Thank you. All right, we are all here. We have a full quorum. Mr. Hochstetler, you have an update.
Sure, I'll get right into it. First of all, when I started recording the meeting, I think we hadn't started it quite soon enough, but those now constitute our minutes. If it's okay with you all, Mara and I were talking about it. I think while it's still this virtual platform, it makes sense to record the public sessions, but we might also put together written minutes just for the ease of looking at past actions or just. So if that works for you all, that was one of the updates we wanted to discuss.
Yeah, I understand the ease of use.
Okay. And then I think we will probably not record the administrative function, but we'll keep internal minutes, written minutes for those going forward.
One idea. You're going to continue to post the public session on YouTube, right?
Yeah. Yes. And and under the Open Meetings Act, those will count as our minutes. But sorry about the delay here.
All right.
A couple of other updates. We have a training coming up for the mayor's office and staff on the 28th and potentially on the 27th as well. So we can send that invitation out to you all if you would like to attend. On the training front, we're also working on a self-service training module. We're working on that in coordination with the Department of Human Resources Training Division, which will be able to be disseminated much more broadly to city employees, and they can take it at their own pace and convenience, and it will require their interactive participation, and then we'll also track their completion. So that's sort of a new front where we're hoping to more broadly make trainings available, better track those. So we don't just have to don't have to just wait for live trainings. We'll still be offering, I think, live trainings as a supplement, but we think the self-service training module will be a big improvement in getting trainings out to more employees.
Okay.
A couple of other quick updates on some of the processes we've been doing. You'll recall last meeting, you all approved ethics requirement notice to go to new mayoral appointees for boards and commissions, and also to new employees. Those were required by the ethics law, but they hadn't been implemented in the systems yet. So after the approval of those notices, we've been working with the relevant parties in the mayor's office and human resources to get those incorporated into the both the onboarding process for new employees and the appointment process. So that's moving full steam ahead. Next, in the financial disclosure world, the new online financial disclosure system is expected to go live for elected officials early next week, and with a second iteration open to all other officials and employees well before their April 30th filing deadline. So elected officials have to file by the 30th of January. That's about, I believe, 15 or 16 individuals. And so that's going to be ready for them 2 weeks before their deadline. And we've been working with Baltimore City IT to make the necessary changes. We've been doing testing. We've been making suggested edits. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that that rolls out smoothly. Mara, did you? Oh, go ahead, Steve. I think you're muted though.
Thank you. I was just wondering at what point we should talk about the complaint process flow chart that you have put together for us.
I put that under discussion of responsibility number 6, but if you want to get into that now, we could.
No. I'm sorry. I was looking at a different agenda. So go right ahead. We'll keep that on track.
Sure. Mara, did you want to give a quick update on where we are in the lobbying, registration, and reporting process now that we're into a new registration term?
Sure. So lobbyists are currently registering for 2021 as well as filing reports for 2020. I did all of the lobbyists and reminded them to file their annual reports, and I've been assisting lobbyists with registering for this year. It's all automated, but a lot of them have contacted me with questions, so we've been working through the process. Additionally, all of these semi-annual reports, which were due June 30th, there were a lot of outstanding reports. They have now all been submitted as of today, which is late. We were kind of catching everyone up, but from here on forward, we have a system set in place that reports will be submitted by the deadline, and we will be reminding lobbyists to avoid any sort of issues. So that's kind of the lobbyist front. If you'd like, Jeff, I can go ahead and just discuss gift solicitations as well. Okay. So
yeah, I think the gift process was next. If you want to give a quick update.
Sure. So for the gift solicitation process, we had a lot of outstanding reports. So it was 20 gift solicitations with outstanding reports. Also, Jeff.
Could we, anyone who's not speaking, could we have you muted, please? I think, yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Thanks.
So for the gift solicitations, so we had a lot of outstanding reports. I have now contacted all of the sponsoring agencies. We've been in contact through email and phone calls, so I know all of them pretty well now. And so we're getting our reports now, and they should be on time. I've also set up a system to make sure that those reports come in on time. And Jeff might be able to comment more on this, but we contacted the Baltimore Civic Fund, and they'll be able to provide information about the reports that they manage, or the gift solicitation campaigns. So that's kind of where we are with all of those. So we're making a lot of progress.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So after some of these final reports came in, and I'm not sure there had been a normal process for reviewing them in the past, to get an idea of where we are, what those reports are supposed to look like, and what kind of documentation there is. I contacted the Baltimore Civic Fund, which is the fiscal sponsor for a lot of these, and it was a very timely contact because leadership over there had similar questions about how the solicitation process should be working, et cetera. So we're working together to identify the campaigns that are currently using the Civic Fund as a sponsor, and that's sort of the foundation for some broader communications about how the Civic Fund, as the city's kind of and grant administering arm, will be operating in the parameters of ethics and other procedures going forward. So I've made contact there, and we have some other meetings planned, and I'll bring any of those concerns to the board's attention as they come up. Those conversations might be a natural point to think about potentially amending some of our own solicitation regulations. So I think that's going to be a really good partnership to have.
All right. Any other reports or updates from Mara or Jeff?
Not at this.
All right, shall we move into old business? All right, the only old business of which I'm aware is Councilman Cohen's gift solicitation request for Healing City, Baltimore. What was the last part of the process of the approval thereof?
As of the last meeting, they had sent their application, and the 4 or 5 additional questions that had been put to Councilman Cohen's office last time there was an application submitted. We decided it was probably best practice to ask those questions again with regard to this solicitation. So you will see the answers from his office to those questions. You'll also be probably happy to know we updated the solicitation application form with these questions now. So every new application can incorporate them. So I believe it was up to the board to review these, and if they looked, appropriate as an amendment to the application, I think it would be next up for potential approval.
Yeah. Does anybody have any objections to incorporating those materials into further correspondence, future correspondence?
No, I agree. It's Donna.
No, I agree. This is Arnold.
Yeah, ditto. It's Melody. I agree.
Yeah, I think it's unanimous. So let's go ahead and do that. And thank you for everyone's input. So as we go forward, we'll already have more information than we did in the past, and that's the name of the game. So, all right, are we in a position now, therefore, to approve or to move to approve the solicitation request?
I have an issue that I'd like to raise. Sure. I know that this process is more than we have undertaken in the past, but I think it's important. And with regard specifically to question number 3, we've asked the councilman, and we'll ask everyone moving forward, it sounds like, what measures will be taken by the distributing entity to ensure that the donations will actually be used for the intended purpose. And 2 points to that. Number 1, my reading of the response does not answer the question. There's no specific response about what measures are taken. And I don't want to belabor this point, but I think it's important that we think about this and that we safeguard against the misuse of donations that are given with a specific purpose. And I'm saying that because you probably all read the article, or may have read the article in the Brew that highlighted some contentiousness over the Baltimore Youth Fund's use for debit cards. And without going into too much detail, which I'm happy to do, but there was it seems seemingly a misunderstanding about donors or the use of that fund and how the funds were ultimately used. And so what I think part of our job is to make sure that donors have a full understanding of the use of the funds for which they're donating, and that those funds are distributed in good faith. And so if there are no measures that guard against that, then we're not doing our job. So I would just be interested to know what you guys think about answer number 3 and the broader issue of asking this question, because there's no purpose in asking the question if we're not going to require a full and complete answer.
Well, I'm 100% think we need to ask that question. I don't think anybody doesn't think we shouldn't, here on this board, doesn't think we shouldn't answer that. I think that's what we just voted unanimously, that we want to incorporate these questions. So I have no problem with the question being asked. As far as the sufficiency of the answer, it's not exactly what I would have wanted, but I'll defer. I want to hear from others on what action, if any, we should take based on the response.
if you'd like me to be more specific about what I think it lacks, I'm happy to tell you. I mean, in my mind, the answer discusses the approval of grant funds, and it talks specifically about grant conditions and grant funds. But what I think we have, the purpose behind this question is particularly for individuals and businesses who donate, are measures in place that the funds that they donate will be used for that purpose. So the response is really geared towards how the grant funds will be used in grant applications. But unless I'm misreading it, or you guys disagree with me that this is not a complete answer with regard to what measures will be taken to ensure that the donations are going to be used for a particular purpose. I mean, I hate to continue to push Councilman Cohen. That's not my intent, but I also want to make sure that we don't just rubber stamp answers.
It seems to me that I may be misinterpreting this, and I probably am, but it seems to me that the onus is on the recipient of the grant to say what use will be made of the funds, rather than, I'm not sure how we hold the donor to saying how those funds will be used. I'm not clear on that. Maybe, Melody, you could just say a few more words about it. I don't apologize. I'm not seeing how that falls on them.
My point, Arnold, is if you were to donate to a cause and you were donating because you believe the funds that you were giving were to be used for a specific and finite purpose. Right. And then ultimately those funds were not managed appropriately, or whether there's intent behind it or not, but ultimately those funds were used for a completely different purpose. That's right. What I'm trying to avoid, so that we don't have a misuse of funds, maybe not with a nefarious intent, but that we are safeguarding the use of funds for a purpose for which they were not otherwise intended. Does that make sense?
It makes plenty of sense. But I've got a question. Does the donor control that, or does the receiving entity control how the funds will be used? I mean, that's what
we're asking Councilman Cohen to ensure, that the distribution of funds are used for the purpose for which the donor asks that they be used.
Okay, I see. I got you then.
And Melody, let's talk about a right answer, in a hypothetical case, not necessarily this one. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're probably looking for something to the effect that in the event that donations are to be used for anything other than the intended purpose as listed on the solicitation application, the donor or the recipients will contact the ethics board or the board of estimates, for that matter. I mean, does that sound about right? You would want to hear about that, or you would want to have a chance to vet that request for a change in position.
I guess I don't understand your question. All I'm asking is to know. All I'm asking is to know what they're going to do to make sure that the funds don't go somewhere else. And just by way of analogy, again, there was an issue recently during which $6 million were taken out for debit cards of the Baltimore Youth Fund. And just by way of example, that fund was meant for youth. It was started to benefit the youth of Baltimore, and there were a lot of complaints that the money that was given out with the debit cards were given out to families without children, and it was the money was used for a purpose other than which it was initially intended. That's what I'm just trying to safeguard, and it's not. I just want to know what measures they're taking to make sure that the money is not going to other causes.
So yeah, so back to what I was saying. I mean, I think it would be within our realm to require them to notify the ethics board if in fact donations are being used for an alternative purpose. Not even necessarily permission, but notice.
Well, and if I could jump in, procedurally right now, the way the board would become aware of that, if it wasn't brought up in some other way, is when Cohen's office would file their reports, because those reports are supposed to show how, the donations received, where they went, etc. And the review would be, the board review would be able to compare that to the scope. And I mean, right now they're saying in answer number 3 that the president and the program director at the fiscal sponsor are responsible for ensuring that they are in compliance with the grant condition. So the grant condition here would be the scope of the the solicitation application, and so I guess at that point the ball would stop with them if we see that funds were somehow released for a purpose that wasn't within the scope of the application.
So based on what Jeff's saying, I agree. In theory, it is covered in the paperwork. How do you prevent it from happening? It's a valid point, Mara, but I'm not sure if the program coordinator approves those funds for an alternative use. I'm not sure anything we could say would prevent that. I think we could reiterate that point in the approval. And I don't like the fact that it gets caught on the back end, if at all, because using her example, all it would say in the final report is give debit cards given out to families in need. It wouldn't say, oh, by the way, half of those families didn't necessarily have children. So I'm not sure we'd catch it on the back end anyway.
That's really my point, Donna, is that I love being proactive about this. And, this is maybe not the best example, Councilman Cohen's request, but I think it's something that we need to focus on if we're going to ask these questions.
Yeah.
to vet it exactly like we are now. So I do like your idea, Donna, of raising this in a response. But I do also think that we're here to be proactive about this. And so whatever we can do on the front end to catch it and let them know we're aware, I think is ideal.
And this is part of where our conversations with the Civic Fund are actually really important now, because what we're all trying to get at is, it kind of looks like some of these reports have maybe been a little vague in accounting for where the donations have gone, and that's not something that the board's going to let slide anymore. And it may be that the board's not in the best position to actually be the accounting, etc., because that is the job of the fiscal sponsor. And so I think in our review of those reports, we're going to need to demand more of the fiscal sponsor and the sponsoring agency to actually have something more like a best practice of accounting of, okay, where did these things go, and does it actually fall within the scope? So maybe even making new applicants and approved applicants aware that this is going to be the board's focus going forward, kind of puts them on notice that, look, there's going to be a higher level of review here, and that's already happening with Mara reaching out and even asking for reports in the first place. That wasn't done, and we want to get to a place where we make all of this public as well. I mean, these reports there's nothing that protects them, and the law says that they should be public, but they're not. I mean, they've been embedded in layers of internal files that we've been trying to pull through. So I think it's all part of a new review regime to make sure that donations are actually reviewed and surveilled now.
Yeah, I agree completely. So do we want to change the language for question number 3 at all, Melanie, or are you comfortable with the question as written?
I mean, I realize I'm one of 4, so I'm fine with the question as written, because quite frankly, I think I wrote it. But if anybody wants to add, if anybody wants to add to it to make it more articulate, or make it more specific to a more pinpointed request. I mean, I would be, I have no proud of authorship here. But like I said, I mean, I think I just wanted to raise the issue. How we handle it is, up to the group. I think it's important that we, spend time reading these responses to make sure that they're full and comprehensive.
Well, let me go back to notice again. I'd like it to say after the first question of number 3, say the second question, will you notify the board before making any disbursements for purposes other than those intended in the solicitation application? And then secondly, do we have the statutory authority to make that requirement, Jeff?
I thought that was already required.
Well, I mean,
I'd
be concerned that asking that question made it sound like it could be approved.
Right.
Like it can't be. Funds can't go for anything other than, or donations can't go to anything other than the scope of the application right now.
Agree.
And Maura, I mean, while I totally agree with where you're coming from, I'm just not sure we can design the process for the worst case scenario.
That's totally understandable. I mean, I feel like I've done my due diligence. Yeah. The response wasn't as fulsome as I had hoped. We've vetted it. I mean, I think we've done what we can do other than just alert the councilman in a response, as Donna suggested.
And to put it on Maura's plate, when we sign these things, to start tracking when or if we're getting those accounting reports, because I know we've had a problem with that in the past.
Oh, that's all calendared and tracked now, for sure.
Okay, good.
Yep.
And again, other than a robust audit, I don't even know how we would find this out if it was someone in the right position changing the scope or the intent. Unfortunately.
I agree, Donna, but I also think it's important for them to know that we're watching or that we're aware of this issue.
Yep.
And I would say just from emailing them and asking for outstanding reports and reminding them that once their approval expires, they're not allowed to solicit funds, people are getting a lot more cautious. I definitely am seeing a movement. It's
fantastic.
People are noticing.
Because the board is in the authority then to not approve any additional applications and probably to demand whatever accounting it feels fully complies with the responses. So that we're still kind of in that process of flagging which current campaigns responses need further elaboration, and I'm hoping to get some more clarity on that through a conversation with the Civic Fund, because they're technically the accountant for some of these campaigns.
All right, so the way we are leaving this, we are going to ask for further clarification from the councilman in question 3, or are we in a position to dispose of the request at this time?
I would just offer that I liked Donna's suggestion that we approve it with sort of an asterisk, and encourage the councilman to just include a more fulsome request next time, if to the extent he's able. I mean, Donna, you said it better. Do you want to repeat what you said before?
Oh dear.
I mean, does that encompass this?
Yeah,
I'd
say let's approve it if everybody's in agreement, and to reiterate in the approval that it's approved based on the information given, and if any conditions or situation changes, please advise us at the soonest point possible. This is a specific approval.
Absolutely. Do I have a second for Donna's motion?
Second.
All right. There being a motion and a second, I move that we approve Donna's motion, that we approve the Healing City Baltimore 2021 solicitation request with further instructions. All in favor, say aye.
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 Arnold? Anybody here, Arnold?
Muted. Aye, sorry about that.
Okay. All right. All right, the motion carries. Do we have any other old business in open session, Jeff?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. All right, time to move to new business.
Unless, yeah, I don't believe there's any new business, public business at this point.
All right, if that being the case, I'll move that we enter administrative session.
Well, real quick, Steve, did you want to quickly take a review of the complaint flow chart?
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go ahead and do that. And that way it's fresh, it's up here, and it'll be good for the video. So let's do that.
I guess the only reason I put in the public session is because we'd like to put this on the website under complaints, and just get it on the record that this is one of many board responsibilities that we can quickly talk about per meeting. And then kind of as a general update on this front, we hit the ground running once the OIG took over staffing in October, from complaints to the financial disclosure process, lobbying, training, internal employee notices, the daily advice and guidance type of role. And we're getting a better handle on the universe of all those responsibilities as we go. And we've quickly implemented tracking documents and other sort of systemic programs to help us with that. And now sort of the next step is doing written internal procedures in a lot of these fronts. Those aren't finalized yet, but I at least wanted to update you where we are on that. And I think as we flesh out some of the internal written processes here, we will be in a position to know what might need to be enshrined in a regulation, new regulations for the board. And it's interesting on that front, the city recently passed an Administrative Procedure Act. So any regulations that are adopted by the board are going to have to go through a notice and comment period and be approved, et cetera. So that's going to be a lot of fun if and when we have new regulations to either approve or withdraw. But right now there aren't any formal regulations in the complaint process. We are guided by the parameters in the law, and we put together the flow chart that I provided, sort of as a basic overview there. I think it's a really good pictorial representation of our process and your process, and we would like to make that public on the site. And there are, of course, a lot more interstitial steps that we can spell out in our internal procedures and potentially in regulations. But that's sort of where we are, at least on that complaint front. So if anyone had any questions on that flow chart, we can talk about it now, or we can wait until it is as applied in the administrative session.
Yeah, if you want to, I don't know if you're able to share this with the screen.
Yeah, it should be.
But it's a great flow chart.
Actually,
it's
Maro, could you share it?
Self-explanatory.
I'm actually on my phone and looking on my laptop, so it's harder for me to get a document to share.
So I'm not sure if there's one prescribed method of process flowchart, but the one I'm accustomed to, at a decision point, you use a triangle, not a circle. It's just a knit. So
okay,
I'll put that out there. That might be the engineering way of doing it. I don't know. And on each of the points, you would indicate, there's usually a little line and then an indicator of who owns that process. So where it says, for example, make a determination if this is an ethics issue. Okay, who makes that
Mhm.
determination? Is that the director, office of the director? Is that the ethics board? Who owns that process? It doesn't mean they're the only one that does it, but it's who owns it. So those are two generic comments about the layout of the chart.
No, I like that. And I think there might be a couple of different purposes for different visuals. Like I'm thinking that one that's kind of basic like this, and I like the idea of triangles, so we could change that. But this could be at this point, at least a public facing one that just sort of tries to make sense at the broad level of the board process. And then in the written internal procedures process, we make it much clearer who has responsibility and more iteration. So is that acceptable?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I love this, and I think it'll be very helpful to the public.
Yeah, great
And
job.
I think something.
Yep.
Yeah, good work, Mara.
Mara,
realizing
really
it.
appreciate it. I hate it doing these process flows in my. I mean, I have little questions along the way. Is this the appropriate time to ask, or should I hold?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's.
So for example, a complaint is filed or received, and in the explanation you could say it could be received a number of ways, but board jurisdiction. So right now it's showing board jurisdiction. No, dismiss it. Yes, invoke the process. I think there is probably quite a number of other situations where it wouldn't come to us, but it wouldn't be dismissed. Because when you open up a successful complaint process, you're going to get all kinds of things. So just imagine for a moment, you got a complaint against a public services worker who is dumping contaminated waste in an alley. That isn't something that we necessarily would handle, but it certainly is not going to get dismissed.
Right.
Now,
it would at least be dismissed as far as the ethics board is concerned, but we certainly could refer it to anyone else.
But because this is the public facing, saying dismissed means throw it out. You know, dismissed, you're out of here. And so either we have to use different.
Maybe you could say dismissed or referred.
Yeah.
Or otherwise referred or something.
Referred for other action. Right. I mean, we could get a sexual harassment complaint here. We're not going to dismiss it, or a social equity complaint or justice complaint. It would go to human resources. So
go to the OIG. It would go to
yep, exactly.
State's attorney, etc. Yep. Suggestion.
And
any others on this? I mean, knowing that it's also included with we'll include it with the law on complaints.
Of course.
But
my only other issue is, and this is for us, not the public facing side of it, is when is the ethics board made aware of what's in the queue? Because right now it could be 6 months down the road waiting for an investigation and a report and a meeting. Let's say, I mean, that's not unreasonable, maybe 4 months. And I would think we would like to know what's in the queue and what's been coming in our process, but referred elsewhere. Does that make sense to everybody else, or am I the only one that would like visibility?
It's an excellent idea. And on the other hand, I got to say, it's not always possible. I mean, what if there's an internal review by the employer, by the agency, for some kind of malfeasance that was on the part of Department of Transportation employee? It could take months, weeks,
Mhm.
certainly, before that information is passed on to an appropriate, whether it be human resources or another authority.
Right.
Wouldn't you
So-
agree?
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is at every meeting, we should have a report of the metrics. 6 calls came in, 2 were general questions, 3 were referred
Oh, okay.
elsewhere, 4 were dismissed, and 3 are being investigated. I think I just did my math wrong, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and so far, I'll say I believe we've done that in each meeting. We've either been able to submit the report of findings, or I've let you know that, look, this came in, here's what we're thinking, and then what do you all think? So far, again, because there hasn't been a deluge, we've been doing that, I believe, for the most part. So we will certainly add that to the administrative session agenda going forward to let you know the status of basically all of them up until and through dismissal.
That's good. So on the public facing side, I don't want it to look like the city employees can dismiss, investigate, and work things before that civilian review board on the ethics board sees anything.
Right. Yeah, I think, and so maybe we can make clear that, and again, I think our process is nimble enough that we will make you aware of any complaints that come in, even if it seems clear that they're not in our jurisdiction. We'll let you all have the final say on that.
Okay, so I would just say, let's put a placeholder, Steve, in every meeting in the confidential section of the meeting for what are the metrics and explanation. We don't need details. If something comes in that's clearly an IG issue or a very sensitive personnel issue, let's say, like a HIPAA issue, just a simple, an issue came in, I did not believe it was in the jurisdiction of the ethics committee, here's why, and I have referred this to blah, blah, blah.
No, I think it's great. My only concern is that, and certainly in the past, going into an administrative session didn't happen at every meeting. So I'm okay with us entering administrative session to discuss that.
Well, we never went
And who
into
knows,
it
the way
because
things have been.
we never had any complaints. We never had a system of tracking, and
Yeah,
we were
I'm
auditing.
100% for metrics.
Right.
I love it. No,
Yep.
I don't even know if we need to vote on it. Is everybody okay with that? That's just going to be a new section for our administrative meeting minutes and agenda.
Mhm.
Anybody feel negatively about us briefly discussing metrics?
I
during
don't.
our- Okay, great.
Mhm.
So,
So along with that, can we do pile on here? I would
Uh-huh.
like to hear if Maura's have any problem getting paperwork in.
Yep.
Sure, I can absolutely do that.
We can basically give you an update on, well, in the public section, I think we can let you, sort of like I did up front, we can let you know where we are with solicitation. We'll think about if we want it in the public or the administrative, but we'll fill you in on every front, like what we've been dealing with on gift solicitation side of things, what we've been dealing with on lobbying, side of things, where we are in the complaint queue. And I think we could even add the help desk matter, at least numbers, between last meeting and this meeting, we had.
Yep.
56,
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And the confidential section would be, oh, by the way, one of those people who didn't turn in their form was this person who's a high level official. Great.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
And I think it's helpful too. I still think this public facing flow chart with a couple of the amendments we've discussed is good, but even before complaint is filed, there may be a number of issues that come up that haven't been encapsulated in a formal complaint yet, but it may be it may be good to you know, sometimes my advice is that, do you think this sounds like it could be an ethics thing? And I've been usually very, very broad in that, but I think it'd be good to bring those to you all as well, because the board obviously can file its own complaints if need be.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Like when you have your conversations with people.
Exactly.
A lot of people don't feel like they have enough of the structure to file a formal complaint, but they love to say, hypothetically,
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend. So yes.
And and a couple of times that's happened with, you know, things come into the IG and then they then they get sort of referred as an ethics complaint. But I think involving the board up front with that is a good idea.
Okay. So are we finished with the process flow?
Anybody else have any questions or edit requests?
Not me.
All right. All right, so I think it's ready to print, Jeff.
Well, we're gonna do a couple little edits on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Triangle and make it clear that the board is not necessarily just dismissing things
Right.
willy-nilly.
Or
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you for your info.
Yep, thank you. So one other placeholder to put out there for new business, and I didn't think of this before, I'm sorry, is the annual report that we need to do. Oh, look at Mara, she knows, she's shaking
We
her
got
head.
staff now.
So we need to be accountable to ourselves for that.
Yep.
Okay.
And right now, I believe the deadline is, and we've set an internal deadline consistent with the deadline for the OIG's report of September 30th, which covers the fiscal year that ends the preceding June 30th.
Good. Okay.
Fantastic.
So
Well,
that's,
it'll be entirely a good news story for at least our honeymoon period.
well, though, I mean, seeing as how there hasn't been one since 2014, anything has to look better than.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Is that going to conclude our public
I have one
session?
go back because I'm feeling a little bit on shaky ground based on Melody's comments. Is if we could take a look at what we asked for on those solicitation requests and beef up the language, or let's maybe give it a once over. Do we own that form? Okay.
Yeah.
So Melody, that might be a place where we can beef it up.
And like I said,
Because right now it's kind of, for lack of a better term, wishy-washy. And folks have gotten into the habit of giving very plain vanilla answers.
Right. I think we need to focus on the information we want, and we need to, as a group, maybe modify the language to be as articulate as we can, because it is easy to just sort of, if you're completing that form, throw some stuff, some boilerplate down on the paper and know that it's going to get rubber stamped. And that's a waste of everybody's time. So I agree with you, Donna, and I'm happy to help in any way with that.
Well, can we give ourselves a homework assignment, Steve, to do that for the next meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to remember though, and I think that's part of it, is that, you know, some of these council members are filing 20 of these a year. So you can guarantee that it's cut and paste and it's going to be very vague and very general, and we want to avoid that. I understand that why that happens. It happens in every industry, but we do want our answers to be more specific, more tailored to each solicitation request.
Yeah.
So yeah, to that end, Mara, let's send out to the board the blank application form, the blank reporting form, and the regulations that currently govern the solicitation process. And I think that'll give a good overview, you know, to see what needs to be strengthened, where it would like additional language, and we can provide our thoughts as well.
Also, on the website, just recently, we put up a gift solicitation page. You'll see it on the menu, and it has the law, an overview, and the reports. I'll still send it an email, but you can access that at any point on our website.
Excellent.
Okay, so if we could take a look at that and have some initial, if we have revision requests or wording requests, let's try to get those to Jeff before our next meeting.
Yep.
Otherwise, let's be prepared to discuss it at our next meeting. Yeah.
I like it.
Mara, why are you
I
smiling?
like it. Just so you
Perfect.
guys know, I can't see any of you. I can see, like, occasionally I'll see one person. So if I'm interacting weird, it's because I literally can see no one.
You pull up gallery view.
We can see you.
Okay, good.
So
I'm sorry for that, and I'm sorry for that.
Mara always looks like she's ready to take our call. She's standing
know.
by. This
That's
is a
pretty
limited
colorful.
time offer. I just pledged
she
to the
takes
polar
plenty of-
bear plunge. Yeah, exactly.
She has the
All
perfect
right.
staged background. That's what it
Yep.
is.
Indeed. All right, is that going to conclude our regular session? All
I
right,
believe so from our end.
I will move that we enter into administrative session at this time, 2:30, 3:30.
Okay, second.
All right, all in favor of entering administrative session signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. All right, we are waiting for the recording to stop.